Hello and welcome to Blood and Ashes, a Wheel of Time spoiler cast. I'm joined as always by my good friends Jody.
Hello, sir.
Oh, you remembered your name. And Villy.
Woohoo! I'm here.
How you doing, guys?
Fantastic.
Pretty good. Not too shabby. Not hungover this time.
Excellent. I'm hungover from 2 nights ago, so you...
That's the age speaking. It was 2 nights ago. Still dealing with it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a real tame night and I'm still an absolute mess. So let's quickly recap a couple items from our last episode. We were all stumped around a couple pronunciations of both fantasy and just plain English words. The first and foremost being the word beer. And I made a solemn oath in that episode that I will find out how to pronounce it. And it is beer, like the drink. And Jody, you were right. It is the space in which they lay a body before putting them in the ground or doing whatever it is. So that all made sense. And also in the last episode, I made a bold claim to count the number of times that Nynaeve tugs at her braid throughout the series. And it wasn't long after we stopped the recording that I decided that is foolish, especially considering the fact that there are literally hundreds and thousands of people out on the internet that have already done that and recorded it everywhere, and you can go find that stuff with a pretty basic Google search. So I'm not going to put myself through that pain. But one interesting thing that our friend Hannes sent through was that he had taken the EPUB versions of the books and fed them through some kind of text converter and was able to search a couple of text phrases. He sent through a whole list, but one that I thought was really relevant to our podcast, since we mention her all the time, is Bella, and how many times she's mentioned by name in the first book, and it's 94 times.
I thought it would be more.
You think so?
She
No.
deserves 100 at least.
She was almost there. So, I mean, there's real grounds for renaming the podcast, or at least the website, to involve Bella somehow. So this week we will cover chapters 18 to 23, I think it is. Yes, 18 through 23. And in the last episode, we left the gang as they had just left Baerlon and looked back to see a big fire being started, and we had fun contemplating who it was that could have started that fire. True to form, we didn't come up with any definitive answers, and we still don't have them now. So, moving on from that position of authority, Jody, why don't you enlighten us with your razor-sharp analysis of Chapter 18?
No pressure, eh? Yeah, Chapter 18, The Road to Camelin, or The Road to Nowhere, as it should be called. That puts that song in your head. So yeah, the Fellowship is on the road to Camelin. Traveling through low hills and whatnot, and the boys are trying to figure out where they are based on looking at Bran's old maps in the town and the tavern, and geeking out, being the boys that they are. Everything seems to be going fine. They start hearing these horns behind them, Trolloc horns. So they're like, no shit. Trolloc's, of course, does his land thing, starts doubling back. He is back within 2 ticks, and he's like, no, there's a lot of shit behind us. All right, there's at least, I think he says in the books, 3 to 5 fists with at least 4 half men leading them. So we're talking 1,000 Trollocs. Talking, well, how much was in a fist again? 100.
100.
Yeah, okay. So we're talking around 300 to 500 behind them, but then they start hearing the same Trolloc horns from ahead of them on the road as well. Because they were even speaking about that in the book, in that chapter, saying like, yeah, they're chasing us from behind so that we'll go faster. In what direction? Why? What's waiting for us there? So they decide, okay, this is, we're trapped. We can either go south or north. So they choose north, and off they head into the wilderness off the main road. But of course, the Trollocs, being led by the half-men, are smart enough and start following them. And soon enough, the Trollocs start catching up to them and biting at their heels. And they have to eventually make a stand. And they're on top of this one hill when they turn around and they see all the Trollocs line up in a line that stretches out of sight either way. And I'm at this point, because I don't remember this chapter at all, and I'm thinking, what the shit are they going to do here now? And so they form up and attack, which I was not expecting. I was like, how many are in that group? There's the 3 boys, Lan, Moraine, and Egwene and Nynaeve.
And Tom.
7,
And
right?
Tom.
And Tom. I forgot about Tom. Sorry, Tom. 8. So, yeah, they form up in a line and scream their battle cries for the 7 towers and all kinds of things. And this is where we hear Matt speak the old tongue for the first time in his battle cry without even knowing it. We get an explanation of that a bit later. So they run into the horde of Trollocs, and obviously the Trollocs are not trying to kill the boys; they're just trying to capture them. So that's why they survive as long as they do. A little bit of Tavir and luck, I suppose, as well. And having Moraine Sedai, I will use her title, and the Lord of the 7 Towers there to help them. They do survive a bit longer, and then eventually, as things look like they're getting shit serious, they all the Trollocs freak out and start grabbing their heads and running around. And it's Lan. He's taken on the half-man and has decapitated it, obviously, because that's the only way. Yes, this guy. Like, my voice is shaking and I've got goosebumps. Yeah, he's just the best. So yeah, that gives them a chance again for them to escape from this situation and try and get out of there as fast as they can. They do, but again, they get the Trollocs regroup. More halfmen come in there and take control again, and they reform and attack again. And this is where Moraine really starts showing her stuff, and a kind of like a Dumai's Wells situation. Rolling ring of earth and fire.
The big words.
Rolling ring of earth and fire. And anyway, she does exactly that, but it's more like a straight wall. It's not in a circle. So yeah, she plants her staff in the ground and starts channeling and creates this. The earth starts rippling underneath and chucking the Trollocs off their feet. Fire shooting out of the ground, consuming them. Just a great, great episode. This is going to be lots of visual effects. This is where all their budget's going, I imagine.
Totally.
And if they don't do this, I'll be very upset. But anyway, so she starts decimating them, but the half-men remain unaffected. They're sitting on their horses. The earth is rippling underneath them, and they don't even move. So again, after that, there's firewalls everywhere. They decide, okay, now's another time for us to get the hell out of town. And off they go again into the hills, into the north. So this is where they can have a little respite again, and that's where Moraine starts explaining about the old tongue and how strong the old blood is, and that Matt cried that battle cry in the old tongue, and that's when the boys as well kind of like look at him a bit skew, like, okay, maybe they're after you and not anyone else because you seem important. Little did they know, of course, they're all important. And then they can hear the Trollocs again. This is not going to end. We have to get far, far away. So they go deeper into the woods until they find this ruined city, some insignificant place of no importance to the story whatsoever. And in they go, some place called an arid hole or some shit. No one knows. It's not important. It's not going to come up in the story again. So,
it's not on any maps.
Not on any maps. It's not, don't worry about it.
Can't be important.
No. So in they go. Turns out this old city called Arenhold is now called Shadar Logoth. And that's where we leave this chapter as they go and seek refuge in there, reluctantly against Moraine Sedai's better judgment, but, literally between a rock and a hard place. So that's the end of that chapter. They're inside there now and seem to be safe for 5 or 10 minutes.
At the end of that chapter, I think Moraine or Lan says, when someone asks what is it called, they say Shadar Logoth. It's called Shadar Logoth. They say the name twice, and you, as a previous reader, you're like, oh yes, that name deserves to be said twice because what lies in here is so heavy. It's such a great part of the story. It's probably my favorite stretch of the first book, is everything involving Shadar Logoth and around it.
I didn't realize that this was so soon in the books. We're at chapter 18, and we're already in Shadar Logoth.
I know. I also did not remember much about this chapter at all. For some reason, in my mind, well, not for some reason, because I was a young idiot when I read it, but what I remember this scene being, I mean, the part with Matt screaming the battle cry in the old tongue always stuck in my head because it is rad. But what I always remembered was them just sort of riding along the road, and then there's these rolling green hills next to the road, and a bunch of Trollocs ran at them, and then they fought. Where when I read this chapter this time, in general, I'm a lot more aware of like how bleak the landscape is. Like it's cold, it's really cold. I'm picking up on that a lot more than I did, previous reads. And like the trees are sort of dry and leafless. And when they're sort of scrambling, when they go off the road, because like you said, I mean, they're traveling from west to east, and then they hear the horns behind them and in front of them. And Moraine and Lan have an argument about whether they should go north or south. They end up going north, and they go off the road, and they are sort of like scrambling up hills and sort of like, faltering down the other sides of the hills and getting scratched by branches and stuff. Like it's actually quite a claustrophobic environment. And that's why they sort of happen upon these Trollocs at one point. And I never painted that picture as clearly in my mind as I did this time. Probably because I'm trying to do it this time as well. Really trying to soak everything in.
Yeah.
But yeah, like to me this time, the scenery, the where the whole thing played out was way different.
I noticed that as well, especially the temperature that you're speaking of, everything being cold over these 6 chapters that we're going to discuss today. That's also something that stuck out to me a lot.
Totally, yeah.
It's not something is very wrong. There's no game to catch. There's no rabbits. There's no birds. There's no animals. It's
it's desolate. Also, we have to say, obviously, the cry that Matt gives in the old tongue is for the honor of the red eagle, for the honor of the rose of the sun, the rose of the sun. And when he shouts it, Robert Jordan mentions that the fade pauses.
I did not read that.
He either recognizes the language, or I thought, like, I don't know what the lifespan of a fade is. Did that fade fight in a battle against Menetherin? Like I was stoked to read that the half-man paused when he heard Matt shout that, because he hears the other war cries as well, but when Matt shouts his, he takes notice of it.
I wonder. But maybe Fades just have more knowledge. They're more human than the Trollocs, and they're trained to lead. Perhaps they just have more knowledge from the Dark One and able to do their jobs better, and they know about the old tongue and things like that. I don't know.
Oh, they know about Aradol and not going into Shadar Logoth and all that stuff. So yeah, maybe they're educated nightmare creatures.
Or you can picture them all sitting in a nice little rows.
They went to Nightmare University.
Degree from Shyle Ghul. What else? Villy, what did you think of this chapter?
I wondered whether they had an orchestrated move to create pins and surround them, or whether there was 2 groups that knew that they were going to come north or east or west. But
I think the former for sure. I think they planned it. When Lan talks about them, being fanning out behind them, he said they're driving us to something.
Yeah.
And then you hear the horns up front. It's definitely a plan.
Well, they were doing their very most. And I mean, at that stage, I think it was 5 fists that they said. So we can say 500 Trollocs and 4 half-men driving them. It's now showing almost the desperation of the Dark One to get hold of these boys.
Yeah. Moraine also says like 500, like she even ponders in that moment, why didn't they send all 500 to Eamon's Field?
Well, they thought it was going to be easy pickings.
Yeah, totally. Also, I guess since this is a spoiler cast, we can say that they probably didn't relish the fact of, marching through the ways. It's not, okay, let's send the entire host of Trollocs through the ways and hope that Mush and Shin doesn't just, destroy the entire Dark One's army in one fell swoop.
Yeah, they must have sent more than what came out, knowing that, hey, we're going to lose a whole bunch of these along the way. So how many did they send into the ways to begin with?
50 fists.
Yeah, send a couple decoys to other destinations, draw the wind.
Well, we're getting there. We'll get you there.
Yeah, we are. But yeah, also just love the battle. Lan, he goes straight for the fade. And even the Trollocs, like they leave a ring open around them as they're fighting, and Lan and the Fade are both fighting on horseback, and the black horses are like matching step for step, and as Lan and the Fade's blades meet, there's like lightning crackling in the sky and stuff, and bright flashes of light. Like it is a very, very visually satisfying scene that you're right, Jody. I absolutely hope that they can convey in the show.
Big ask.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot more. I mean, that makes me think about the sword, the land sword. Is that just an effect, like the lightning and the sounds and stuff? Is that just an effect of fighting a fade? It doesn't matter who's fighting them.
I think Landsword is power wrought.
Must be.
I think it's not a Heronmark blade, but I think it is a power wrought blade.
Well, it was put in his hand at birth.
Yeah, it's probably like a royal, Malkia sort of lineage, family heirloom type of thing.
Valyrian sword passed down from family to family. Yeah.
Anything else? I mean, that's when you're reading that chapter, it's just go, go, go. And that sense of panic of them sort of like hearing the horns get closer and closer and closer, and then scrabbling through the bush, like over this rocky terrain or like hilly terrain. The tension is really ratcheted up in a big way. And then Moiraine.
Yeah, that's what Villy was mentioning as well, that build up of tension over 16, 18 chapters. Yeah, we finally get like a release of that here.
Yeah. And it's huge. Like you said, Joe, it's like early in the story, and this is a big battle, and then Moiraine just, toes the line and just goes fucking ham on these guys.
Yes, I believe that was Robert Jordan's exact words.
Yes, Robert Jordan. And then Moiraine went ham.
Fucking ham.
But okay, now let's get to the real meat of the story.
Oh.
Villy, why don't you take us into chapter 19, Shadows Waiting?
Shadows Waiting. That is now almost straight into a calm anticlimax. I mean, the group enters the city, big city. I mean, they thought they saw a city when they rode into that empty, desolate place. It was a massive, old, historical city. No sign of life, nothing. No footsteps or no paw prints, no birds, just dead. Absolutely dead. They eventually find some suitable accommodation in a massive sort of hall, and Lan instructs the boys and Tom, and quite noticeably Tom directly, like stable the horses, find them a room next door, take them around back. Lan gets Moiraine off her horse. She's obviously very, very weak at this stage from the battle before. She must have delved deep into the power to do what she did right there. She was very, very worn down. And
yeah, she says she's not strong in earth and fire specifically.
Yeah.
And that's why it's just super drained her. And that's exactly the two elements that she channeled there, waves of earth and a firewall.
Exactly. And Nynaeve, of course, is like, no, she needs my herbs. She needs nothing but my herbs. Quite stubborn, and to the point where sort of Lan was quite direct with her, and Moiraine said, like, just chill out again. She doesn't understand yet. She'll get there. Anyway, Tom mutters under his breath, and the three boys, and they take the horses to the next room. Another massive, big room. I'm not sure if it's almost like an entertainment hall that they found that they're sort of using as temporary accommodation.
It seemed like everything was big. So even like whatever structure they were going into was going to be cavernous, especially with like the insides gutted.
I had trouble visualizing the size of it because all the text makes you think it's massive. In my brain, it was just too big. It is an Ogier-built city.
Ogier-built city, but there's also the description that they move between, and we'll get there, where they move between rooms to rooms as they leave the alleyway. We'll get soon. That they said the Wine Spring Inn would fit into the rooms 3 times over. That's how big those spaces are. I mean, the Wine Spring Inn is the biggest building these boys have ever seen in their life growing up.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden they realize, like, shit, mate, that is a really tiny room. Like, this is big. And well, now of course Matt, seeing all this big open emptiness, he's on form. He's just pinging to get out there.
Badges in all his pockets.
He's like, no, we've got to do something. We got to be out of here, without consulting the safety. But now they were led to believe they were in a safe space and never questioned anything, despite how much and how big and how many bad people are after them. This is the most perfect opportunity to go exploring, with or without permission. Tom, at that stage, I think he was too rattled about the fact that Lan had won over him and gave him the instruction to stable the horses. sort of like
Hmm.
land upping Tom 1 again there. And all he wanted was to smoke his pipe. We don't know what he was smoking in his pipe, but he wanted to just go sit down and smoke his pipe, maybe just relief from the battle. And he left the boys, and Matt saw an alleyway, back door, and he was like, "We going." Perrin and Rand, it's maybe not the best idea, but Matt persuaded them, and off they go. And they head out exploring, finding room after room, place after place that is, again, desolate, empty, dustful. Furniture, just to the touch, would fall apart. Tapestries, if you just look at them the wrong way, they fall into dust. It's like old. No one's been there. No one's touched anything. And Matt's convinced he's going to find treasure. Like right there, I'm going to find treasure. Let's keep going. They go a little bit deeper and they enter a really big room. And out of the sudden, from the behind them, after Matt prompted them, let's go up into one of the spires. We could probably see everything from up there. Someone says, no, it's not safe up there. And they're like, whoa. Rand grabs sword, ready, like, who the hell is this? And they then come across this guy that's sort of hiding in the shadows, hanging around. It's like, no, like, just don't go up there. But who are you? What are you doing here? And they're like, no, we just, hanging around, hunting for treasure.
Just chilling.
Just chilling. And they're like, oh, well, I've got a lot of treasure. This guy, and Rand sort of questions him, like, well, who are you? And he's like, no, my name is Mordeth. And I'm looking for someone to help me just to load this treasure onto my horses. And can you help me?
Can I just say, more death?
I wanted to, but I didn't want to stop Billy.
I mean, come on, boys. This guy's name, this guy who appeared out of the shadow in this forsaken city, his name is More Death.
Death.
So, and more of it. So, I mean, I don't know who to be more annoyed with, Robert Jordan for picking such an on-the-nose name for a bad guy, or the boys for actually just going along with him. But anyway, Billy, continue.
So Matt is just treasure in his eyes. You can almost see the gold coin in his eyes blinking. And he's like, yep, we'll help you. Come on, let's go. Rand and Perrin both very questionable of this. And like, okay, well, this is just a bit weird. Anyway, Matt, being Matt, does his Matt thing and follows Mordeth up the stairs. And they're going down the stairs and to a point where it gets really dark in this building. And Matt now actually starts getting quite afraid. And you can hear it sort of like, oh, are we getting there? Type of questionable askings like where we are. And eventually they see some light. There's some torches burning in a hallway. And they walk into a room. And lo and behold, Smog's treasure is piled up. And we're talking coins and golden goblets and daggers and rubies and emeralds. I mean, it's piled up there.
Daggers and rubies, you say?
Yeah, daggers and rubies.
But like together in one thing or separately?
Separate, one thing, a multitude of a lot of treasure. And they sort of also now like, okay, cool, noticing that the light's fading. And Mordeth kind of like, no, just help me load up some bags, take it to my horses. They're outside of the city. And that is when they said, like, look, we got to get back to our mates. And it's like, he gets like visibly upset, Mordeth. Like, what? There's other people here that you didn't tell me about? And literally starts swelling in size, like blocking the entrance, becoming gigantic. And the boys are grabbing at their... Perrin grabs an axe. Rand's got his sword out and going. And Matt, poor guy, just having a bow, decides to grab a dagger out of the treasure pile. And they get ready, and he turns into a slither of smoke and sort of disappears, like in anger. The torches go out, and they decide, right, this is our cue to get the fuck out of here. This is as if Mordeth wasn't enough. Like right now, it's enough. We got to get out of here. So they make their way, sort of trying to find their way through the dark. There's a bit of screeching behind them, like, I'll get you. I think the words was "I'll kill you." I can't exactly remember now. And they eventually like barge out into the open, falling over each other in the haste of getting out of that building. And Rand realizes that, man, I get the feeling like these in the book. It says his hairs on his neck was standing up as if someone was watching him, and the shadows was watching them. Now, I read that over a couple of times, and I can't really make out if they could physically see eyes watching them, or it was just a continuous feeling of the shadows watching them.
I think it's the latter.
That there was actually eyes.
No. That they could only feel it.
They only feel it.
But all three of them could.
And they're like, okay, let's stay out of the shadows, move quick. We got to get back to where we were. Not a lot happens, and eventually they sort of all barge into this safe space where Moraine and Nynaeve, Green, and Tom is, and they tumble in there, and immediately Moraine gets up, and no Lan. It's like immediately Nynaeve, like, I knew it. That they up to shit. Like it must have been
Matt's idea.
It's Matt. And Moraine asked him, like, where have you been? And sort of like they started speaking over each other, telling their story almost incoherently and over each other. It's a whole lot of gibberish coming out with a whole lot of treasure, daggers, shadows, scary dust, and then the word Mordred. And she grabs Rand on the arm and says, you said the name Mordred. Are you sure he said his name is Mordred? And did you take anything from him? And did you help him with anything? To which all the boys like, no, we didn't accept anything from him. We didn't help him with. We just told him we'll come back the next day. There was a lot of treasure. And but you told us it was safe. You told us that this is a safe place. And she's like, yeah, safe from the stuff outside. Like, it didn't tell you what was inside. Maybe that was her fault. Like,
why do you think the Trollocs don't want to come in here? What do you think Trollocs are scared of?
And she then starts laying down the history of Arid Hole.
Arid Hole.
Anyway, that it was the city that the king. Now, where's my notes? What was his name?
Bolwyn?
Was
that his son?
Iron Fist, Iron Hand,
something like that.
Who ruled during that period of time, and Mordred sort of slithered into the city, became very quickly sort of the right-hand man, whispered little secrets in his ears, and soon
with his worm tongue.
Again, close drawings to Lord of the Rings.
Tolkien, yeah.
I was trying not to say anything there.
It's going to happen every single cast, I think, that we're going to bring that up, because there's just these similarities. And the city, although in quest of the light, almost turned, and I think pointedly, like, talking into how humanity goes, like turning in on themselves to, okay, it was Balwyn McGill. I probably raped that. But
spot on.
I know. That's exactly right.
Go, Jody, tell me.
No, you said it perfectly.
And the king of Manetheren sent his son Car to come and win back into the Second Covenant, and found the shell of Balwyn at the throne with Mordred on the side. And Mordred named them all as dark friends and murdered and imprisoned them. Car later escaped, hunted by Mordred and his dark creatures. When the army was sent to avenge Car, they found the gates was torn off the palace, and there was no one left in there. And from there on forward, it was known as Shadar Logoth, Shadows Waiting, the place of Mashadar.
Mm-hmm.
History.
And
thanks, buddy.
Thank you. I did some research on that one. Now, when Moraine enlightens the boys of what danger that is actually out there, they kind of like, WTF, mate? Like, why didn't you tell us this before? And why are we staying here? And she said, like, look, wards were set, and they weren't set for the Darkmen. They weren't set for the Fades. They weren't set for the Trollocs. They were set to keep us safe in this place. And you decided to go treasure hunting like a bunch of baboons and got yourself into some decent shit right now. And she said, well, look, we're still safe. Like, we'll wait for land to get back. Just relax. And okay, they started calming down. Happy to see, obviously, that the herbs has helped her and Nynaeve's little bit of healing. Again, going back, did the herbs help her, or did Nynaeve channel healing into her? Question mark.
I don't think Moraine would have just let Nynaeve channel on her without some level of guidance. I get the sense that it was specifically the herbs. I mean, she even says, before Nynaeve gives it to her, she says, can you give me something to help me sleep for an hour? But I don't want to be groggy when I wake up.
It's a fox root or fox glove and something, I remember. So anyway,
What am I, a wisdom?
I don't know.
I think fox root or something is to stop her from channeling. Later on, they give it to channelers.
Oh, yeah. Fork root.
Fork root.
That's what it is.
There we go. And well, Land returns. And he says, bad news, Davol is in the walls and they're being driven by 4 Madral. So that's already sort of like being whipped into place. And they all sort of surprised at this. But he says, okay, but what is driving them? Why are they in here? They know the danger as well. Sort of now we're wondering, is one of the Forsaken pushing them in? Open question.
Yeah.
And they realize, like, look, we got to get moving now. This is really, really not a good place to be in. And this is where they then get on their mounts and make a bolt for it.
I have a lot of questions and very few answers. Joe, what did you think? What are your takeaways from our introduction to Shadar Logoth?
Not much besides, I mean, I remember them being in this city. I remember them, cruising around looking for stuff and treasure and, finding more death. I remembered all of that. So there wasn't anything new. I just thought, come on, guys, like, look where you are. Like, don't go cruising around treasure hunting by yourselves. You're being chased by Trollocs. It's really stupid.
Make better choices.
Yes.
To be honest, we are speaking of 18-year-old boys. What did we do as 18-year-olds?
I don't know. Matt's got a special talent for convincing. I mean, especially the likes of Perrin. They go, like, Robert Jordan goes out of his way to explain how thoughtful and like how Perrin thinks things through before he acts, that sort of thing. And he goes along with Rand as well. So Matt obviously has an ability to make Rand and Perrin do things that they would not ordinarily do. They act out of character around Matt.
I would say it's kind of like how you influenced me and Jody as younger men.
Okay, well, we don't need to delve into that right now. I mean, Matt turned out to be a hero, so I'll take that as a compliment. I liked that when Rand overhears Nynaeve and Moraine and Lan talking, when Lan's saying, careful with your herbs, Nynaeve says, just because I don't like someone doesn't mean I won't like them, which just reinforces that thing you said last time, Vili, about how Nynaeve is just absolutely dedicated to helping people, whether she likes them or not, and why she goes to the yellow. And I like that about her. And there's also that brief moment where Rand is looking at Matt when they're stabling the horses, and he sees Matt is sort of distracted, and he's thinking the same thing that Matt's thinking. Is the shadow actually after Matt? He's thinking back to, why did he shout that stuff in that tongue? He didn't understand that, and he sort of played it down, but it's distracting him a little.
I think all of the boys have so many questions on them at this stage, except Perrin. But we'll get there.
Yeah.
Now, I did a little bit of delving into Mordeth, and to try and see what was this whole sort of history of the person. Now, it took a few Reddit searches and fandom searches and all of that, but there has been apparently talks between Robert Jordan in sit-down interviews and then later Brandon Sanderson, where the explanation comes that Mordeth went in search of more power to fight the Dark One. He was power hungry, and his search led him to the Finns, the Elfin and the Elfin.
Oh.
And in that, he got the power of Mashadar.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that power corrupted him, but also bound him. And that's, I think, in my interpretation, is that he was bound within the city walls, where he has been for thousands of the years.
Yeah, he
And
didn't recognize the name Camelin.
yeah, no, not at all. And he got trapped, and the only way to escape for him was for someone to take something from him or outside the city walls.
Mm.
And that actually happens later on in the books.
Yeah.
When he escapes, and then our favorite antagonist and him meets up, Baden
Yeah.
Fane.
Yeah.
Yep, I'll just leave it there.
Uh-huh.
We'll have days to curse about this yet.
We will.
But that again is quite interesting. The Finns.
Okay, that makes sense. I mean, in the last episode, I mentioned that the first book, maybe even the first two books, have a couple things in them that don't necessarily fit the world of magic and the rules within that world of magic that Robert Jordan laid out. You know, everything about the one power and channeling and all that sort of stuff can be explained. But especially in the early books, there's a couple things that sort of reek of old magic.
Yeah,
You know,
and
things that don't fit into the White Tower narrative and stuff, and all the stuff about Mashadar, Mash and Shin.
that's old power. Very, very old things.
Yeah. So okay, so that explanation of the Elfin and the Eelfin granting him that power, that fits nicely because I mean the one tower is right outside the city, isn't it? Like it's just along the river.
That's correct. Yes. Now that made a lot of sense for me as well. And of course, now as we learn a bit later, in the incident where Mordeth grew, Matt grabbed a dagger and kept the
Mm,
dagger. And from that moment, he concealed that he had the dagger. Even when
yes.
Moraine questioned him, sort of, did you take anything? Did you? And he's like, no.
Yeah.
Already then, he was already poisoned. Like, this dagger is to be hidden.
Yeah. All it needed was a little lie, and he was already corrupted enough to tell that little lie, and
Exactly.
that set the path for him.
And it's quite interesting how many times that dagger changes hands as well later on.
Mm,
But we'll get to that, I suppose. But this is, I mean, this is a massive chapter. Sets up so many things that go all the way to the end.
yeah.
That is influenced in this one chapter with Mordeth and Mashadar,
Yeah.
bringing in old sort of things that come from before the breaking, things that come from the Age of Legends,
Yeah.
and brought into this almost, you want to say, new world channeling, one power, true source
Yeah. It's
sort
so
of
great.
realm.
I
Yeah,
dig
it's
it.
fantastic. I mean, this was for me amazing.
Yeah, it muddies the waters in a way that I enjoy because it just opens the door a little bit for other stuff that can't be quote unquote explained by that rule set I keep referring to. There's stuff that they don't know about. Even a little later on, and I guess we'll get there as well. But when Elias is talking to Perrin about the ability to talk to wolves, this is a really really old thing.
Old thing.
And the Aes Sedai don't like it because to them it seems like something that might be a result of the weakening of the seals on the Dark One's prison and that sort of stuff.
But
So yeah,
these chapters all dive into old things. We've already got in chapter 18, all of a sudden, Matt shouting the war cry of Manetheren,
yeah,
something really old. They
mm,
come in touch with a really old evil, like seriously,
mm,
before the breaking of the world, old evil. And we go on to Perrin and Elias, again, a really old thing. So it's
yeah.
just expanding the world that they're in that is still connected.
Now, Philly, in your research, maybe you can point to the answer to this question that I have. When Mordeth is talking to them, when they're busy scooping up treasure, and Matt's just running his mouth again, and he mentions the fact that they are there with other people, and that one of them is Aes Sedai and stuff. And Mordeth expands and he freaks out about the Aes Sedai, and then he reaches towards Rand with massive hands, and Rand either trips or he falls over somehow, and he knocks his own wind out. And as he thinks he's about to die, Mordeth starts wailing. Does Rand channel? Why does Mordeth suddenly, from being this massive thing, shrink back down again, and start wailing, and then run away.
That's interesting. I know that in that instance, there may be a mention of Rand sort of again, hair standing on. It's sort of hair rising on the back of his neck. I don't know if that was mentioned in there, but it's definitely something to go back and read into and read more into.
I mean, I was looking for signs, like telltale signs of Rand channeling, and I couldn't see anything. He just seems dazed, and then suddenly Mordeth is sort of like, I mean, I keep saying wailing, but that's the word that they use.
Yeah,
And
he's screeching and turns into a slither of smoke and disappears through a crack.
yes, and I mean, he had the upper hand there. He was about to grab Rand, so I just didn't understand why that happened.
Can Mordeth physically harm anyone at this stage of his entrapment? Or is his
Surely,
power completely bound to Shadar?
I
Because
don't
he
know.
doesn't, in any of this, until he escapes the city walls, is he able
Mm,
to sort of take a body, and only once you accept something from him, or
mm,
once you do him a favor,
mm.
is he able to then take your body?
Yeah, I don't know. It just it seemed odd, and I mean, the nature of Mordeth is that you don't know anything about, again, quote unquote, the rules that govern how he
Yeah,
behaves.
absolutely. Well, how did he, Balwin, how did he empower Balwin? Through whispering in his ear. And he did the power moves.
There's a lot of talk about how the city turned inward against itself, like spreading rumors about people and causing, internal
Infighting.
strife, maybe, yeah, causing infighting, having people assassinate each other, becoming cynical and paranoid, and, who knows what he did with Balwin.
One of the things that I read and picked up that this in the entire series is one of the biggest lessons about humanity of what happened to the citizens of Aradol.
Mm,
That it's the biggest lesson that there is to learn how just the smallest whisper can completely annihilate this sort of a standout arguable city civilization through just infighting and
yeah,
almost politics, if you want to say
yeah,
that.
yeah. For sure. Okay, we should keep going. Otherwise, we're going to spend this entire episode talking about Shadar Logoth.
Yeah, I've just
I
been
did.
rereading the book now while you guys are talking. That's why I've been so quiet. I'm trying to find out why this happened. I think, could it be that I'm sorry, we're continuing this. Could it be that Mordeth can sense the touch of the shadow on these boys? Like when he reaches out for them, he can tell, oh shit, they're marked. They're marked by the Dark One.
Jody, you just threw a
Mm,
dice into the mix there that none of us thought about. Let's talk.
Because I'm reading when Rand falls, when he expands and he reaches out with him with these massive hands, he stumbles back and falls down and knocks his breath out. There's no like tingling or giddiness or
No,
anything
nothing
like
exactly.
like
that. And then Rand hears the screech and he looks up and all the boys are standing there shocked. And Mordeth is in the corner hugging his knees and rocking back and forth, saying, "You're all dead. You're all dead." Why is he saying you're all dead?
Mm, maybe.
Ooh,
That's a good angle, Joe. I like
wow.
that.
Thank you very much.
And thank you, Elvis.
All right, let's move on. Let's leave that hanging.
Ooh, God, it's so juicy. Yes, so chapter 20, Dust on the Wind. Right, so as they depart, Moraine is not as tired as she was anymore because of Nynaeve's herbs. But as they're riding off, everyone sort of forms a cluster around Rand and Tom, except for Lan and Moraine, who are, off a bit ahead of them. And suddenly Rand realizes, oh shit, they're actually like 30 paces behind them. And as they want to speed up, they see this mist coming out from the buildings on the side of the street and laying across the road between Lan and Moraine and the rest of the party. And as they sort of want to come forward, Moraine gives this sort of hushed call saying, "Wait, stop," and explains this is Mashadar. Basically, if you touch it, you die. So everyone is adequately shocked, and Moraine just points at a red star low on the eastern horizon, and she says, "Whatever you do, just keep following that star towards the east, because eventually you're going to hit the river. Just keep going until you hit the river. We'll find you." And she says, "Trust me, I can find you." I'm assuming that's because of the coins that the boys are carrying.
Indeed.
So they all split up and they ride off, and Rand sort of reluctantly takes the lead. No one's moving. So when Rand moves, they start following him. So already he's taking a bit of a leadership role there. And they come around a couple corners, and then there's mist there, and then they have to turn around again. They have to leave. And they keep trying a different route, and then eventually they turn a corner, and there's like a whole wall of fog, and they're like, oh shit, okay, there's no way we're going through here. And as they turn around, 2 Trollocs walk into the road, and then 2 behind them, and they sort of bump into each other, and everyone's sort of staring at each other. And then when everyone, including the Trollocs, realize what's happening, they bolt, and everyone shouts, follow me, and they split up. And this chapter is called Dust on the Wind, and it is now with Lan and Moraine leaving and then these guys splitting up, it is the moment where the party is split and we start following these independent storylines, which, as you guys know, having previously read the stories and how many storylines are going, this is a big moment now where we're graduating from single storyline mode into multiple storylines.
And never ending.
And it doesn't stop until the very end of the book. So they bolt. And Rand is off by himself. He's running, and he's got these Trollocs chasing him. And then when he looks back, he sees there's an actual Fade also chasing them. Chasing the Trollocs. And as he goes down one street, he notices like a dozen or so tendrils of this mist coming through the windows on either side of the street, and he kicks Cloud even harder, and the horse leaps forward, and he just hunches down low, and he just bolts. And he looks back when he's past the sort of tendrils of mist, and he can see the Trollocs are sort of faltering, but the Fade, and this is also something I never remembered, the Fade pulls out a whip and like literally cracks a whip behind them, and it also makes like sparks in the air, and the Trollocs come after him, but the mist sort of has cottoned on to what's happening at that point, and they the tendrils shoot out, and they actually like grab the Trollocs, and as the Trollocs are trying to shout, the mist is both enveloping their bodies and going down their throats, like into their bodies. It reminded me of that scene in The Matrix where, Neo takes the red pill and the
Exactly that in my mind.
sort of like flows down his throat. Yeah. And the same thing happens to the Fade. And as the Fade tries to scream, Shadar just sort of like eats up the sound, but then there is still this thin wail that can be heard, and it is bone chilling. So they're obviously quite destroyed by Shadar, and Rand just keeps going. And as he's gone on a bit further, he's keeping to the shadows, and he looks ahead, and he sees in the shadows ahead of him that there's sort of like a dark mass with something that looks like it could be a catchpole sticking out, and he thinks, fuck, it's another Trolloc. But his instinct isn't to go away. He literally charges at the dark shape and unsheaths his sword, which is, very uncharacteristic for a sheepherder. But he does it, and it turns out it's Matt. And just at the last second, he pulls his sword back, and it's Matt. And he's like, "Oh shit! Have you seen anyone else?" And they haven't. So they leave the city through a pretty large gate. And as they're sort of outside the city, and they're relaxing a little bit, Tom appears out of nowhere, galloping past them, and in another parallel with Tolkien, he says to them, "Ride, you fools."
Stop saying the things that are in my brain.
I can see your face right now, Tony.
I mean, it's so close, hey? But anyway, so then obviously Tom is being chased by a bunch of Trollocs. And then it switches back to Perrin, who is still within the city walls, and he's sitting on one side of what looks like a large square with a gate on the other side. But unlike Rand and Matty, he's sitting in the shadows, and he is looking at the square, and he's sussing everything out before he makes a move. And when he eventually decides, okay, cool, he's gonna go to the gate now, he sees another shape on the other side of the square, and the shape is sort of shouting, "Rand, is that you?" And turns out it's Egwene, and Perrin comes out and says, "No, it's me." And the two of them leave together. And as they leave the city, they hear a horn blowing behind them again, and they're like, "Oh fuck, the jig is up. Let's get out of here." And as they're running out of the city, Bella's actually falling behind. There's no channelers around at the moment, sort of boosting her with the one power. And as they are running away, Perrin suddenly just falls off the horse, and the horse falls down, and he's ridden off like a little bluff straight into the river. So he's obviously lost sight of Egwene, and spears are landing in the water all around him, and he has to kick off his cloak, and eventually he makes it to the other side of the river. And he calls, and he can't hear anything except the faint cries of Trollocs. He can't hear any other voices answering him. So then it switches back to Rand, Matt, and Tom, where they are they've gotten away from Trollocs. But then as they're sort of still moving slowly through the forest, a bunch of Trollocs jump them. And again, they have to bolt, and they run off, and Matt and I think Matt puts an arrow in one of their eyes or something. Like Matt's riding with a knocked arrow, and they ride off, and they don't see Tom. But then suddenly Tom bursts out of the trees behind the Trollocs, and it's just like flashing steel from his hands, and he's felled 3 of them with knives. One in the eye, one in the back, and one of them screams. And he goes, "Yeah, look, the others are going to hear, so keep going." So they ride until they hit the river, but they don't, like Perrin, fall straight into it. They ride up to it, and then they decide to go down the river. And as they do, they see a light, and they go up to it, and it turns out to be like an 80-foot trader's boat moored in the river. So Tom tells them, "Grab your saddlebags and stuff, let's climb on you." And as they do, Rand steps on the guy, Gelb, the sentry, who was supposed to be looking out for everyone, and he yells, and suddenly there's Trollocs all over the boat, and it's a big fight, and Rand gets slammed in the back, I think, by something. And as he turns around, he sees a Trolloc balanced on the sort of like the handrail, about to skewer him with the shattered shaft of the catchpole that he used to smash Rand with. And Rand figures everything is happening in slow motion. He can almost see himself dying. And in that moment, he shouts, "No!" And the whole boat lurches, and the boom swings around and crushes the Trolloc's chest and like swings him right off the boat. Keep that image in mind when we get to this later part, because that boom swung around and destroyed a Trolloc. But then when things sort of settle down, and all the Trollocs have been dispatched, well, at least some of the Trollocs have been dispatched, and the boat has actually been set free and is moving down the river. A guy in a coat and long hair with a beard that leaves his upper lip bare comes up to them and goes, "Okay, who are you guys?" And he's got a funny accent that Rand doesn't recognize. It quickly becomes obvious that he's the captain of the boat, Baerlon. And he takes them down into his cabin, and he starts asking them questions about, who are you? What are you doing here? And Tom spins a pretty good tale about why they're there. And when Baerlon says, "Okay, cool, let's talk, passage," the boys offer up their silver coins as payment for passage, for safe passage. And Tom sort of later berates them for that and said, "I could have gotten us away with, or gotten away with just telling a couple stories and playing some music, and we would have made it." But at this point now, the boys have taken leave of their special silver coins that they got from Moraine. And something that I noticed this time for the first time is that Baerlon says that he's tired of being hounded by Trollocs, and he tells them a story about being up in Saldea and being trapped there for the winter, and the raids and everything there getting worse. But that also seemed like a bit of a just a fraction of the story, not the whole story. And is it because he has one of the Dark One's seals on his boat?
Does he?
Doesn't he? I thought that at some point, it turns out Baerlon actually has this disc of Quendalar, or however you pronounce that,
Exactly
in like an
that.
oilskin on his boat. I think that is the case. If not, then fast forward a couple minutes.
You're talking about Taviran finding a
It's
boat
true.
at the moment of need that is forming a lasting relationship with the person that is going to pop up a bit later.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
maybe. Who happens to be carrying one of the 7 seals of the Dark One's prison.
Exactly.
And I think it's unbroken.
And he speaks like a pirate.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was thinking about that as well, how they're going to, convert that over to the TV series. If they've got some like laughable comic character with a crazy pirate accent, I'm going to be very upset.
Jack Sparrow-like individual.
Jeez, no, man.
Yeah, so, I mean, big chapter. Everyone split up. Problems.
There you go.
Things are not going well.
That's the tagline for this chapter. Everyone split up.
Yeah.
Problems.
Dust on the wind, problems.
Problems. I love that. Yeah, that was another big one, man.
Mashadar, hey? Touches you, you die. That shit is fucked.
I want to go back to Cloud. They had to jump on the boat very, very quickly and leave their horses behind. What happened to those horses? Are they now in a Trolloc cookpot, as they so like to say?
I think it's safe to say they were consumed.
Yeah. The horses either swam away because they get, Rand says, I think at one point that the horse has the smell of Trollocs in its nose. So, I mean, they are freaked out by them. So maybe it runs into the river to try and get away from them. Let's hope that the horses are okay. But if not, then yes, definitely cookpot.
There was a point that I thought almost that they managed to get the horses onto the boat, as it was an 80-foot vessel. But when they leave off the boat, they didn't have the horses; they were on foot. So at that point, you kind of through a process of elimination, you figure out that the horses wasn't on the boat.
Yeah, no, they dismount and there's no like gangplank. They climbed up over the side, and it seemed like it was higher up. So I don't think they had the mechanism with which to actually get the horses on the boat. And luckily, Tom told them to take their saddlebags and stuff off.
Indeed. That comes back to what you were saying. You said, remember the boom.
Oh, yes. When Baerlon rocks up, he's standing over Rand and he's calling at Gelb, and the boom swings back. And Baerlon sort of just glances at it briefly and catches it in his hand, and it makes like a slapping sound. Like he is so in tune with his boat. He knows exactly how fast it can move for him to be able to safely catch it with one hand. This is the boom that crushed the Trolloc.
Now, throughout the majority of the journey downriver, they don't have wind. They got to row the boat. So even that night, there wasn't wind. It was a windless night that they were anchored and moored to rest and sleep. And the idea of a boom swinging with that much force to crush a Trolloc, as there's nothing that could have done that other than a little bit of magic.
What, right after the dragon reborn screams, no!
I don't want to die. Lurch. Yeah. Yeah. No, 100%. I'm 99 to 100% sure that is Rand channeling something.
Bale, reprimands Gelb. Gelb was his name?
Yeah.
Gelb. Yeah, you were supposed to tie that up. And he was like, I tied it up. I swear to God.
He said he did, yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Well, he also did sleep on the watch.
Well, he's not perfect.
He can't be trusted.
Dark friend. Hashtag dark friend.
Nice. Pretty straightforward one, that one. So you guys want to go to the next chapter?
Any questions, Phil?
No, I'm good. We can roll on.
Roll on then. That's me, right? Chapter 21.
Listen to the wind.
More wind. Yes. So, what was it? Dust on the Wind was your chapter, right? So this is Listen to the Wind. So this is the next morning now. And we start catching up with all the different people all over as they wake up the next morning and assess their fate. And the first one we join is Nynaeve. After everyone's split up, she's waking up on the banks of the river, and she still has her horse. This woman, she is the best. I mean, Rand just left his horse for the Trollocs for breakfast. Screw that guy.
Perrin lost his.
They're just terrible. But yeah, so Nynaeve still got her horse. So the night before, as with the others, she left through some other gate, or maybe the same gate, or who knows, from Shadar Logoth, and she was attacked by Trollocs that were lying in wait. And that was the same thing that was happening to everybody. They had obviously sent some Trollocs in and then left Trollocs guarding the gates around in case somebody escaped. But the second, she saw them and they started running towards her, and they stopped all of a sudden, sniffed the air, and then left her and ran away to another direction. So she's like, oh my God, they know the smell of the person that they are after, and it's not her. All right. So that kind of realization sets in as well. So of course she needs to make her way to Whitebridge. Seems the most logical choice. There's no star to follow now. So that's where they were going anyway. So she figures she'll just head down on her own and start looking for the kids and everybody else that went missing. And along the way, she starts smelling a fire. So she leaves her horse tied up and starts sneaking through the bush. And she comes across Moraine and Lan, they've started a little fire, and they're having a chat, but they don't hear her approach. So she hides behind a tree and starts listening. So this is a very pivotal point in the story of Nynaeve, because Moraine and Lan did not hear her approach. And I mean, she listens to a huge chunk of the conversation before she is eventually discovered.
Yeah.
But they did not figure it out at all. And when she is discovered, there is, Lan's face says it all. He's not happy about it. Through his stony look, she can see it. I mean, his face is passive and stony to the rest of the world, but Nynaeve can tell.
Nynaeve 2, Lan 0.
Yeah, it's getting there. So she hides and listens, and they're talking about all the things that are important. So now this is where I got the number of 1,000 Trollocs from, because Lan's saying, this is crazy. Like, they could have snuck a few Trollocs down, but there were at least 10 fists. There were 1,000 Trollocs at least, and they appeared quickly and out of nowhere. And Moraine is saying, like, no, but the ways are closed. She mentions the ways here, and that there hasn't been an Aes Sedai powerful enough to travel since the breaking of the world. So, like, the only other options left is perhaps one of the Forsaken is free and is doing this. But even they would, even the whole White Tower couldn't move 1,000 Trollocs overnight. So they have no idea what's going on. But they don't know, of course. She knows kind of where the boys are. They're talking about where everybody is and where they're going. She knows that one of them is across the river because of the coins and the bond.
Yeah.
Because we know Perrin still has his coin, but she knows that 2 others went downstream, but she lost them obviously when the boys gave their coins away as payment on the boat. So she knows kind of in the direction where she wants to go. And then eventually Moraine busts Nynaeve behind the tree when she realizes she's been focusing her attention somewhere else, because she can sense a channeler. And she realizes that Nynaeve is behind the tree. Lan whips out his sword instantaneously and slams it back harder than need be when he realizes it's her.
God damn it.
God, again. And he scratches on a little piece of wood. Nynaeve 2, me 0. And then
he loves her.
He loves her already. He's taken aback by her immediately.
He's impressed by it.
Yeah. No, I mean, she's impressive. So this is where Nynaeve as well confronts them with their dirty Aes Sedai schemes, like leave the boys out of it, leave us all out of it, and go back. And then Moraine starts explaining to her and says, like, well, you can channel. And Nynaeve at first doesn't believe her, but she said, wasn't there a time in the past where somebody you helped suddenly got better very, very quickly, and then a couple of days later you got sick, you had a fever, and then she starts remembering all the times that had happened, and specifically with Egwene, she healed her and then was very, very sick. So she realizes eventually that, she is a channeler. And, she's not going to give up now. She's going to go searching for the boys. And, something else that Moraine says, that Nynaeve may actually be more powerful than Egwene, and Egwene is going to be the most powerful Aes Sedai in centuries. So we get a bit of foreshadowing around that as well.
So great.
So great. So they're all there in the campsite, and they figure, well, we've got to do something. We've got to go somewhere and start looking for somebody. So they make a decision to head south and look for the 2 boys that they know are going on the boat downstream. They figure the other one that's across the river, Perrin, is safe enough. Egwene is a smart girl. She can look after herself. And so they choose to go look after the boys and then, head down that direction. There's another point there where Rand says, okay, I'll go fetch your horse for you, because now he starts seeing Nynaeve as Aes Sedai material because of what Moraine said.
Yes, his attitude towards her changes.
Yes. There's one line even where he says, well, Nynaeve, and then kind of pauses after her name because she thinks he's about to say Nynaeve Sedai.
Yeah.
And he says, I'll go fetch your horse. He starts treating her with more respect, fetching her horse. And she's thinking, he'll never find my horse. I'm too good of it. I don't leave tracks. But of course, later on, he comes back with her horse, and she's a bit pissed.
He scores a point.
Point 1 for Lan. He gets a point back.
He's on the board, finally.
Well, it's only 21 chapters. It's early days yet. And anyway, so that's what they decide. They all mount up, and they head down along the river to go and find the boys. And that's where we leave them. Did I miss anything there?
I think you pretty much got that on point.
There's a couple interesting bits, like when Moraine is trying to convince, or not, she's telling Nynaeve how she suspected that she was the channeler, and she's sort of laying out all these facts in front of Nynaeve so that she would sort of put two and two together. She asks her, so which one did you heal, Perrin or Egwene? Because when you came to Baerlon, you came straight to the inn.
Yeah.
And if you heal someone with a power, you create an affinity for them. And that is actually something that I completely forgot about or never registered, is the affinity that Nynaeve has for Egwene, because she is super, super invested in her. Like, she's her wisdom apprentice. She came to find the boys, obviously, but also very much Egwene. And she nursed her to health when she had breakbone fever, which sounds awful because
Oh,
it sounded
Jesus.
like Egwene was a child and she felt like all her bones were breaking inside her body. I mean, it sounds terrible. And that is when Nynaeve channeled the first time, is when she healed Egwene. So the two of them are actually really very, very close, which is not something that I remember specifically.
Yeah. No, neither did I, man, now that you come to mention it.
Also, something that I've either never knew or forgot was that Moraine explains to Nynaeve that if you have the ability to channel and you don't actually learn how to do it, there's like an 80% chance, I think she said like 4 out of 5 people die within a year or two of actually channeling the first time. Those side effects from channeling happen closer and closer to the actual channeling event all the time until they happen at the same time. And from then it's like a timer is started, and a year or two later, you will die.
Yeah, and there's nothing they can do for you after that. Like,
And she still doesn't believe it at this point in time. She's still like stubborn as anything about it.
Yeah, she ends the chapter with, you said I can control it, and if I can control it, I will use it against you. She's sort of thinking to herself, like she's already wanting to get back at Moraine. Moraine also does a pro reverse psychology on Nynaeve. She goes, no, the wisdom won't be coming with us. And Nynaeve is like, yes, I will.
much to learn, she still has.
So yeah, their little dynamic is super interesting.
It's beautiful. I love it. But for me, there in that whole chapter as well is the tension between her and Lan, and specifically Nynaeve sort of, you won't be able to find my horse, and hoping that he can't find her horse. Like, I leave no tracks. But
the balls of Nynaeve, like he is this like legendary warder,
the king.
And she's like, nah, you won't find my stuff. I'm a better like woodsman than he is.
It builds up to quite a bit there.
Well, she was 2-1 up or 2-0 up at that stage.
It's true.
That's true. Yeah, 2-0 up at that stage. We'll keep score.
I love both of them. They are two of my favorite characters in the whole story.
I didn't remember their relationship forming so early on, but it's cool now. I'm glad I'm doing this reread.
Yes, with the reread, it highlights it so much. And I mean, you could, from watching a lifetime of romantic comedies, like the friction in the beginning is almost a guarantee of an eventual hookup. But
I honestly cannot relate to watching a lifetime of romantic comedies.
Yes, Moritz, we don't know what you're talking about.
You're all in that one, mate.
Okay, well, one day when you can admit it to yourself, we'll have this conversation again. Okay, should we roll on?
Yes.
All right, chapter 22, A Path Chosen.
Yeah, Path Chosen. And after 3 really, really meaty chapters, like very meaty chapters, it is in a whole lot of nothing.
I remember that. What?
It's a bit of a reprieve, actually.
It's kind of breathing space, wipe the sweat down, wipe the sweat under your arms, whatever you do, wherever you need to wipe, just wipe it because you have that time now. I have one note of this entire chapter.
Excellent.
Bella's still alive.
And that's mention number 27.
Why don't you talk us through the chapter, and then we'll see if we can sprinkle a bit more on there.
Perrin wakes up on the banks of the river. He himself has become a bit of a branch. He's got twigs stuck up in all kinds of places. He decides between now not having any sort of ferro rod or anything to make a fire. He's going to spend time making a fire. He's still got a snare. If it ramages through his pockets, he's still got snare wire, and catch a rabbit and eat because he's ravenous. Decides against it and gets moving downriver. He's like, Egwene is a weaker swimmer than I am if she's alive, which means she would be further downriver. He uses his brain and heads downriver, where he eventually finds a hoof print in the mud, and he's like, oh God, I hope Trolloc didn't get through on this side, but the river was really deep. And he sees, all right, it's this hoof has got a horseshoe on, and I know that horseshoe. That is Master Lowen's forge. That is his mark. This is definitely Bella. Like, my heart skipped a few beats. And he decides to follow it, and eventually smells a fire, and there's Egwene with Bella lying against Bella's flank, and she gets a bit of a startling, but they find each other. Brief exchange of pleasantries. What are they going to do? Are they going to go downriver? What is the plan? And eventually they gather a plan to go to Camelin. Off-road, head direct. Let's do this. And
Seems like a good idea at the time.
yep, the only idea I'd say, well, they could try Whitebridge, but why meet everyone up right now?
Yeah, they put, why did they skip Whitebridge again? Is it because they figured that the bad guys are also heading for Whitebridge, so they're going to skip past them because they know the team is eventually going to come via Camelin, so they're going to wait for them there.
Yeah, let's take a shortcut. We'll ask farmers along the way. Like,
In these woods where no one lives.
in these woods where no one lives.
That just shows their naivete.
Naivete. But yeah, it is a bit of a. It's actually quite a short chapter. It's not a very long chapter at all, and it actually gives you a bit of breathing time for me, because you get a bit of relief, especially when Bella has done well. You always get a bit of relief, and they get each other, and they're like, right, at least we're safe. Let's move on. We've got a plan. They've got a path forward, and they set off.
One thing I did notice there, which is worth mentioning in that chapter, is when Perrin finds Egwene, he smells smoke, and she's already started a fire. But she started a fire using the one power. And then later on, when they're traveling along together, they try to start fires again. She can never get it going.
Yeah.
Did she use the one power?
Yeah, she says to him in the next chapter that she lost her flint and everything else in the river.
Okay.
No, she says as well, like, she did it. She explains to him that she was able to do it that first night.
Yeah.
But not again afterwards.
Yeah. I thought when she, in that point where she mentioned it, that she referred to the time that they sat after they crossed the River Perrin with Moraine.
No.
Okay, well, I missed that one.
She started the fire on this side of the Arenal with the one power. I liked how Perrin deduced which way to go. He said, okay, well, if I'm a stronger swimmer than Egwene, then she would have come ashore downriver from where I am right now. So that's how he decides which way to go, which is beautifully logical and simple. And another thing I took from this chapter is that Perrin already starts struggling with the concept of leadership. He and Egwene are sort of like pushing and tugging about like who's going to take the lead. And he, in his inner monologue, is talking about times where he can tell Egwene is expecting him to take the lead. Whether that's right or not remains to be seen and is probably debatable, but he feels like she's expecting him to take the lead. And that is something that Perrin struggles with throughout the series. His assumed leadership when people start following him, and then eventually when he gets back to the Two Rivers and he becomes Lord Perrin of the Two Rivers, like, he is so reluctant to take the lead, but is ultimately a fantastic leader.
Such a humble person.
Perrin Golden Eyes. Yeah. Coming, man.
What a hero.
What a dude.
Not like Lord Matt, one eye, gambler.
Gambler, drunk, womanizer. Yeah.
Did he have a nickname from the band of the Red Hand or something? Just Lord Matt.
Well, I suppose we just have to read it.
We're going to get there. We're going to get through all of this.
We'll get there soon.
We'll correct ourselves later on.
Yeah, in 2 years' time. Okay, so our last chapter for this episode then is chapter 23, Wolf Brother, which admittedly, when I read the chapter listing and came up with, what we were going to read, I thought this was going to be the chapter where they find that guy that was slowly turning into a wolf in a cage. But it's not. It's where you meet Elias, which is an infinitely better chapter because Elias is also amazing.
Oh, yeah. I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, same. Oh, I was so stoked. So anyway, the chapter goes with Perrin and Egwene. They're setting off for Camelin that they've agreed on, constantly arguing about who's going to go on the horse. When Egwene says Perrin has to go on the horse, They butt heads every time. At one point, Perrin, I think, alludes to the fact that he's going to put Egwene on the horse, and then she sort of just smiles and then gets on the horse and just does what he says anyway. And they're sort of traveling. I think it's for a day or something. When Perrin sets some snares, but he doesn't catch anything, but he spots a rabbit just sort of running out of the bush, and he fells it with his sling at 40 paces. He kills this rabbit, which is about to dart around a tree. So at least
A
they
running
have something
rabbit.
to eat.
Yes.
Yeah,
Like it's
I
a
mean,
moving target.
amazing. It's so good. And then they keep going for another couple of days, and they talk about the changing landscape. Like after the river, they get into a more wooded area, and then it sort of clears up again, and they go through these glades that are sometimes like a mile wide. And in these glades, in sort of like the little hollows and stuff, there is still snow, and Perrin's clothes when they set off are still wet, so it's like he's lost his cloak, and it's freezing, and it's hard going, and it's like there's no food to eat. It's really, really grim. Hope we get some nice, good wide angle shots of the two of them traveling through this desolate landscape. And after they've traveled for a little while, they also mentioned that Perrin is plagued by bad dreams, featuring our good friend Belzamon, but he doesn't talk to anyone about it. And then eventually they smell some smoke, and Egwene immediately starts daydreaming about people camping and cooking rabbit, and Perrin says, okay, well, just hang back. I'm going to go check it out. So he walks up to what looks like a campsite in the middle of these trees, and there's a bunch of rabbits on the spit, and there's just one dude sort of leaned up against a tree. He looks like he's sleeping, and Perrin is checking him out, and the guy just says, yep, are you going to... I think Perrin actually drools, or his mouth is watering, and the guy says, you can stop drooling now and come out, bring your friend. I haven't seen you guys eat much in the last couple of days. And he's obviously supremely taken aback, and he says to Egwene they can come in, and they have sort of polite introductions. And Perrin is just sort of remarking on the physical appearance of this guy with all of his animal skin cloak and pants and his round fur cap. When I've read the book originally, I imagined Elias with a big beard. I think they say a beard that fans across his chest.
Yeah.
But I always imagined him with sort of like a wild, scraggly hair, like a real mountain man. But apparently it's all tied up in a ponytail behind his head with a round fur cap on his head. So I'm starting to imagine more of like a bearded Davy Crockett than...
Words out of my mouth again, Moritz.
More than the crazy Stinky Pete, the prospector from Toy Story kind of look. But I think Perrin at that point already notices that he's got yellow eyes. And so they're all obviously quite cautious around each other. And Elias asks them where they're going, and they explain to him that they're going to Camelin, and he just sort of bursts out laughing. He says, the way that you guys are going, you're going to miss Camelin to the north by like 100 miles.
You're way off.
Yeah, we were going to ask for directions, and he goes, ask who? There is nobody out here. You guys could go all the way to the spine of the world without meeting another farm. And you're like, oh, shit, okay, great. Good thing Elias is loping about the forests in the middle of nowhere. Obviously, a bit of Taveran luck there for Perrin. And also, I mean, what a guy to find to introduce Perrin to what becomes his ultimate ability. So while Elias is talking to them, he also says, just suddenly is like, oh, wait, okay, be quiet, my friends are coming. And 4 wolves arrive, and obviously Bella and Egwene and even Perrin are really, really afraid of them, but they sort of just cruise into the campsite. They just hang out there. And as Perrin sort of reaches for his axe, the wolves bristle again, and Elias is like, look, unless you want to die at the hands of these, or at the jaws of these wolves, don't do that. Just make them understand that you're friendly. And Egwene is asking, are they pets? Are they tamed? And Elias just laughs at them, and he says, wolves can't be tamed, and I can talk to them. And the wolves say that so can Perrin. Yeah. And Perrin is just obviously like, no, I can't talk to wolves. So everyone is sort of unsettled by this whole thing, but Elias tells them the story about how the wolves found him. Like he didn't find out that he could speak to wolves. The wolves sort of found him, and that's the way it always goes. At least the wolves tell him that's how it always goes. And that when the ability sort of started setting in, there were some members of the Red Arja that wanted to gentle him. because they didn't understand this thing, so they thought it was one power related. And what he did was he called them Black Arger to their face. So I wonder if this is like our Leandrin and was it Leandrin? Who was there was a red that you read about quite a lot in the beginning, the first red that you hate, and then who later is revealed is Black Arger. But who knows? Elias does not mention that he was a warder, but he says when the Aes Sedai come after him, after he's gone into the woods, he had to kill a couple warders. Nasty business, killing warders just casually.
Yes.
What a fucking badass. I also like that he fights. Is it one long knife or two long knives, almost a sword?
One.
And it's what is his wolf name? They don't say it yet, but I think it's like Longtooth or something like that.
Yeah.
So he then asks them, "So how did you guys get to be here?" And Perrin and Egwene rattle off the story that they'd practiced about coming from Saldea and blah blah blah. And he goes, "That's a good story, except that the wolves over here reckon that it's total fucking bullshit." So
again, they're exact words.
Why don't you have another crack at it and tell us where you're really at? And Perrin is sort of taken aback, but eventually, even though they decided they can't tell everyone the true story, he does lay it all out there, because the wolves could sense that Perrin or Egwene or both of them had Trollocs on their mind the whole time they were telling the story. So he's like, "Tell me about the Trollocs and the Halfmen." So that's when Perrin tells him the whole story. And Elias is like, "Yeah, okay, that is nasty business." The one wolf, Burn, just despises Trollocs and immediately just wants to go killing Trollocs, and doing anything else is a waste of time, because apparently wolves have this like built-in hatred of Trollocs and Shadowspawn and Halfmen. And he's seen a pack of wolves kill a Halfman while it decimated killed half the pack. They didn't let go, they didn't relent until they killed the Halfman, which is pretty impressive if you consider like how Lan and the story so far has made Halfmen out to be virtually unstoppable by anyone other than a warder. Burns sort of runs off with a dozen or so young males, but Dapple is the female that leads the pack. Even though the other wolves know that some of the males are stronger than her, she is by far the smartest, and she's made the decision for the wolves. And Elias has decided that they will accompany Perrin and Egwene to Camelin. And Perrin and Egwene don't really know how to feel about that. And they're sort of like, it's okay, you really don't have to do that. And he's like, "Look, if you're going to make it there alive, you are going to need me." And as the chapter ends, Perrin sort of senses Burn and the other young wolves leaving the vicinity, and he can feel one solid, crystal clear sensation from Burn, and that's just hatred, and then the taste of blood. And it's like, okay, Perrin, you might as well start making peace with this fact now. You are sensing the feelings of a wolf a couple of 100 meters away from you. So, there's something to what they're saying.
Yeah, I love this. I don't remember it being all in one chapter. Like he gets that connection instantaneously.
Yeah, it's it's the same thing. Like it just all of a sudden, like the fact maybe the wolves being so close to him, was it Elias? Was it the wolves?
One and the same at this point.
Yeah,
the wolves find you.
The wolves find you,
and they did.
That's kind of true. They found each other.
Mutual finding.
Much like a romantic comedy.
Oh, Moritz 2 as nil.
Yeah, my central thesis is that the Wheel of Time is actually just one long romantic comedy.
I can't argue with that fact. There's a lot of tugging of braids.
A lot of tugging of braids, a lot of dark humor, though.
This chapter is again our Lord of the Rings moment. In the woods, making a noise. They've seen you ages ago. This is Gimli getting stuck in this. The dwarf breathed so loudly I could have shot him in the dark. Exactly that. Perrin, I mean, look at this. Perrin is even a short, stocky guy that carries an axe. He's got a beard. He's the dwarf. Yeah. Elias is clearly the elf. He's got a bow. Yeah, I tell you, it's exactly the same. Plagiarism.
You had to say it at least once. I kind of liked seeing Egwene a little bit out of her like stoic sense of control when eating the rabbit with like juice running down her chin, like the two of them, like the light of the day changes in the time it takes them to eat before they actually start talking again. Shame the poor guys must have been ravenous. Yeah.
Yeah, completely.
Pretty straightforward chapter that. I mean, some cool glimpses into the Reds trying to gentle Elias and his relationship with the Aes Sedai. And then obviously the big reveal being Perrin and his affinity to wolves.
Yeah, that is a very big reveal. And again, a very old power. Like at this stage, and going further, do we meet anyone else that has the ability to be a wolf brother?
The guy in the cage, wasn't he turning into a wolf because he didn't keep his humanity?
Yeah, but he had already been affected long, and the townsfolk, chained him up or something, put him in that cage in the town.
I think he even has like yellow eyes and stuff. I haven't read ahead, so I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that happens.
Yeah, old powers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the chapter where they mention that as well, like old things. It's like, yeah, this is older than the one power. This is older than people channeling. This is from the first men and the first wolves.
Yes, exactly. When the wolves tell him the message, or send Elias the message of "we haven't hunted with men in a long time," the image he gets is like a cold wind blowing since the dawn of man, or something like that. Like it's like old.
From when they were cavemen, probably. That whole, how we tamed wolves over time and started hunting. So we were like from caveman times.
True. I mean, yeah, because this Wheel of Time is set in our world. The distant past is us, and before us, it's our human history,
and it's also after us.
Time is a flat circle. What else did I want to say? And the old magic, or quote unquote magic, of the wolf dream is something that through most of the story, Perrin has some cool tricks based on his wolfiness, right? His lupine skills at smelling someone lying and detecting small changes in their body temperature and that sort of stuff, being able to see very far, hear very well, smell very well, that sort of stuff. It's all very well and good. But right towards the end of the story, some of like the experienced dreamwalkers, like I think Egwene, some of the maybe even the Aiel wise ones, they encounter Perrin in the world of dreams, and he is just owning shit. I think he changes the direction in which balefire is fired in the world of dreams or something, and he's just like, "What? Didn't you know you can do that?" sort of thing, which is really great because they spend a lot of time, building out Egwene and the Aiel Wise One's abilities in the world of dreams, and then Perrin rocks up and he's just leagues ahead of everyone else.
Well, that reminds me, talking about that, what about Luke? Sir Luke?
Mm-hmm.
What was his name? They called him Slayer?
Yeah.
But he's like, he does have some connection to the wolves, but as in he kills them in the world of dreams. He's not a friend.
I'm going to be talking out of my butt now, which is, again, nothing new. But
it's been going on for an hour and 30 minutes.
Jody, it's been going on for weeks, years even. But the Slayer, Lord Luke, is a relative of Lan's.
Indeed.
He's a dude from Melkir that goes into the Blight and then strikes some deal with the Shadow or something and comes back and has these weird abilities. But he's from Melkir.
Oh, so much reading to be done.
So much cool lore that is, not necessary for the story, that is probably going to be, completely omitted from the show, but is such great flavor. So yeah, okay, so we've already done quite a long recording so far, so should we head into our favorite moments? I actually had a hard time picking one this time.
Yeah. Which one did you pick in the end?
Okay, I'll go first. I'll have to go with one of my oldest favorite moments, one of my favorite moments from even when I read this in high school, and that is Matt shouting his war cry in the old tongue. Love that shit and everything that it symbolizes, like Matt, gaining all those memories of all the men that lived before him, all the way back through Manetherin and before. It's just like this sweet little entree into the feast that is Matt's ass kickery later in the story. It's really great. I loved it.
That's a great one.
Mine was just reading chapter 23's title, Wolf Brother. I mean, I stopped, and my wife was sitting next to me, and I just showed her the Kindle. Like, look at that. And she went, oh, my God. Like, both of us just, oh, this is the one that's happening.
Have you been able to convince Christina to dive into the books again, Joe?
No, she's listening to the podcast.
Excellent. Hi, Christina.
Hi, Christina.
Hey, baby. It's cooking lunch now.
How about you, Vil?
Oh, definitely 2-0 Nynaeve. Her being able to step up to an Aes Sedai and a warder and eavesdrop on them before they pick up on her. That
So
was
great.
a little bit of brilliance there for me. I loved that moment.
That was good because
Yeah.
they never share information. And this is the first time in 20 chapters that we got to see their private conversation. And you learn a lot.
Yes.
You learn about the way.
Yes.
You learn about the 1,000 Trollocs. You learn about the Forsaken being free. You learn a whole bunch of shit.
Yeah, it's well, yeah. Probably like a lot of stuff that you wouldn't understand the first time you read it.
Yeah, like
Yep.
I mean, it was a revelation for me to read it now the second time through like this, and knowing what I know and picking up on all these little Easter eggs that's hidden in the text at this
Oh,
early
it's-
stages already. It's not like the story developed and grew over time. Oh, what about this? And what if we add this in? It was
Like
already
Lost.
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
What am I doing with the story?
What are you doing?
Throw a dart at a board. But this is like, just rife with foreshadowing and hints and stuff. It's so great.
Yeah,
These
absolutely.
books are very inspiring, but also very uninspiring for someone who wants to write a book one day. Because then you start looking back at it. Shit, I got to foreshadow these things 14 books in advance.
You don't have to.
You want it to be good.
Hey,
Yeah.
there's successful writers that wrote the 8th season of Game of Thrones, so
On that sour note,
Thanks, Billy.
next episode we will be doing chapter 24, Flight Down the Arenal, up to the end of chapter 29, Eyes Without Pity. I don't know what chapter 29 is going to be about, but how exciting! I'm loving not reading ahead and being surprised almost on a page by page basis. At this stage, the pace at which cool things are happening is amazing. The first season of the show is going to be a blinder.
For sure. I'm so looking forward to it. 2021. They've started filming again, I think.
yeah, they're back
read
on
about that.
set. Yeah, it's going well.
Rad.
Awesome. All right, guys. So we swung around that sour note into a more positive one. So on that positive note, we can say goodbye and reconvene for our next episode. So see you gentlemen later.
Have a good evening.
Cheers, everyone.